The galaxy remembers the scattering of the Primarchs as one of its great tragedies. The Emperor's greatest creations, his perfect sons, stolen from him by the foul powers of the warp, flung across the stars to be raised on alien worlds and shaped by chance instead of design. In our history, this wound defined the Imperium. It created both the strength and the weakness of the legions. It sowed the seeds for Horus's betrayal and the endless wars that followed. But in this alternate history, the scattering never happens. The Emperor, master of genecraft, master of destiny, completes the Primarch project without interference. Whether he shields them from the meddling of the Chaos gods, or whether those same gods are denied by a will too strong, the result is the same. All 20 Primarchs remain on Terra. They are not flung across distant stars. They are not raised by strangers. They are raised by him. The Emperor does not simply create generals. He raises sons. Imagine Terra in those years. Not just a throne world still scarred by the wars of unification, but a crucible filled with demigods. Horus first among them, shining brightest, his charisma binding brothers to him. Guilliman already building systems and structures, designing the bones of empire before an empire exists. Russ, savage and loyal, testing his brothers in battle again and again. Dawn, a fortress in flesh, unyielding in every test of will. Sanguineous, angelic even then, his wings unfurled in halls of gold, loved by all who see him. Magnus, burning with psychic fire, already reaching deeper into the warp than mortals dare. Curs, shadowed and brooding, warning of futures none wish to hear. All of them together, shaping one another. The bonds they forge are different in this world. In our history, reunion was bittersweet. Brothers met as strangers, united under the Emperor's banner, but shaped by worlds that made them alien to one another. Horus knew the Emperor first and longest, but others, like Perturabo, Mortarion, or Angron, were hardened by bitterness and loss before they were ever found. Rivalries grew because their lives had already diverged. But here, those fractures do not exist, at least not yet. The Primarchs grow as brothers. They train in the same halls, test themselves against one another, push one another to new heights. Their rivalries are immediate, fierce, but tempered by familiarity. Horus and Russ wrestle daily, both determined to prove themselves strongest. Magnus and Lorgar argue endlessly about the nature of divinity and truth, their debates lasting into the night. Perturabo and Dawn clash over fortresses of stone and fortresses of will, each determined to outdo the other. Fulgrim polishes his blade to impossible perfection, while Ferrus crafts weapons of unyielding strength, their friendship as bright and bitter as the steel they love. The Emperor watches, silent but ever present. He does not coddle them. He tests them. He teaches them that unity is strength, that only together can they achieve his vision. He trains them not only in war, but in philosophy, in governance, in discipline. Each son embodies an aspect of his will, but none are left unguided. Even Angron, in this timeline, is spared the slave pits of Nuceria. He is raised in the light of his father, still savage, still filled with rage, but not broken by betrayal. He is a weapon honed, not a wound that festers. What changes most is trust. In the history we know, many Primarchs struggle with doubt, with resentment, with the scars of their upbringings. Here, that doubt is lessened. They are not scattered pawns waiting to be found. They are the Emperor's sons, raised as princes of Terra, raised to be more than conquerors.
They grow with the knowledge that they are chosen, that they are not alone. Their loyalty to the Emperor runs deeper, for he is not a distant figure rediscovered after decades of hardship. He is father, always. And yet, perfection does not mean peace. The Primarchs are too different, too vast in personality, too full of fire to exist without conflict. On Terra, their rivalries shape them into titans. When they duel, cities shake. When they argue, councils tremble. The Emperor allows it, for he knows that in competition they grow sharper. But he also knows that pride can fracture as easily as it can inspire. Horus rises quickly as the favored son. His charisma binds his brothers. His brilliance shines in every campaign. His loyalty is unquestioned.
He is beloved not only by the Emperor, but by his brothers. Guilliman respects his vision. Russ fights him, but trusts him. Sanguinius calls him friend. Even Perturabo and Curse, difficult as they are, cannot deny his aura. Horus becomes what he always was meant to be, war master, leader of leaders, the first among equals. But here his ascension is not a gamble. It is not a title given to unify scattered brothers. It is the natural recognition of what he has always been. The other Primarchs grow in his shadow, but not resentfully. Guilliman finds purpose in structure, his dream of empire already unfolding. Dorn builds fortresses upon Terra that will last millennia. Magnus grows in psychic power under the Emperor's guidance, uncorrupted by exile, still dangerously curious, but not yet doomed. Even Angron, though ever furious, finds some peace in being understood, not healed perhaps, but at least not abandoned. Terra itself becomes something unrecognizable. With 20 demigods shaping it, the cradle of humanity is reforged into the first true jewel of the Imperium. Its armies are disciplined, its sciences advanced, its skies filled with ships. The unification wars end faster, cleaner, for who can resist not one demigod, but 20? No warlord survives, no techno-barbarian defies them. Terra kneels, Mars bows, and the cradle of humanity rises not fractured, but whole. The Emperor's dream is closer than ever. The Great Crusade stands on the horizon. The fleets are built, the legions are armed, the Webway project begins to stir in secret. And this time, when the banners are raised, the Primarchs are ready. They are not scattered generals waiting to be found. They are already united, already tempered, already bound together. The galaxy waits, though it does not yet know it, for a storm unlike any it has ever seen. But even in this perfection, danger whispers. For the Primarchs are not mortals. They are giants. Their pride is as vast as their power, their ambition as unyielding as their strength. Raised together, they are brothers. But brothers fight. Brothers envy. Brothers dream of destinies greater than even their fathers. The Emperor has achieved what he always desired, unity. But unity is fragile, and when cracks appear in something so vast, they spread quickly. This is the dawn of the Great Crusade, in a galaxy where the Primarchs were never scattered. It begins in glory, in brilliance, in perfection. But even in perfection, the seeds of ruin are sown. The galaxy holds its breath. On Terra, the wars of unification are over. The techno-barbarian kings lie slain, their tribes folded into the Emperor's vision. Mars, brought into alliance, supplies fleets and weapons to feed the dream. And standing at the Emperor's side are not scattered generals reclaimed from chance, but all 20 Primarchs, united, raised in his shadow, tempered by his will.
The Great Crusade begins. In our history, the Crusade was a triumph, but it was fractured from the start. The Primarchs arrived in staggered succession, each reclaimed after decades of exile, each carrying the scars of alien worlds that shaped them. Some were loyal, others doubtful, a few already fractured. The Empire's dream of unity was always undermined by the wounds inflicted before it began. But here there are no such wounds. The legions march with their fathers at their head from the very first day. Horus leads with charisma and brilliance, Warmaster by right, the natural choice among brothers who already know and love him. Guilliman ensures that every conquest is not simply victory, but permanence, structuring new territories into functioning empires. Dawn fortifies every world claimed, ensuring no rebellion can ever undo what has been won. Russ, unleashed, hunts down resistance with savagery, his wolves breaking enemies before they can regroup. Perturabo builds engines of war on a scale unseen, crafting siege weapons and void fortresses that batter xenos empires into ruin. And above them all, the Emperor watches, guiding, correcting, ensuring that his dream unfolds without flaw. The effect on the galaxy is staggering. In our history, the Crusade took centuries, its pace slowed by fractured command, by rivalries, by the simple logistics of uniting a galaxy. Here, it burns like wildfire. With 20 generals, 20 demigods working in harmony, humanity expands at a speed no xenos could have foreseen. Systems fall one after another, empires crumble, and banners of the imperial Aquila rise where once there was only division. The Eldar feel it first. Their craft worlds, unbroken in this alternate history, look upon the surge of humanity with wary eyes. Their seers had long whispered of mankind as a rising power, but they had not expected it to come so swiftly. Their fleets probe the edges of the expanding Imperium, skirmishes flare, and for the first time in millennia, the Eldar sense a rival not born of arrogance, but of inevitability. The Orcs, too, eternal tide of green fury, roar against the expansion. But where once they could overwhelm isolated campaigns, here they find themselves outmatched. For every warg that rises, a Primarch stands ready. Russ leads the wolves against warbands in the galactic north, his howls echoing as he drowns orcs in their own blood. Dawn builds fortresses so vast even orc brutality cannot breach them. Ferrus Manus and Perturabo craft weapons that burn entire wargs from the stars. Even the most powerful war bosses fall before the combined fury of united legions. The minor xenos races are swept aside with terrifying speed. The Hrud migrations are burned from their tunnels. The Rangdan are exterminated in wars even shorter and more decisive than in our timeline. Human civilizations scattered by the age of strife are not merely reconnected, they are absorbed into a machine so vast and organized that resistance is futile. Worlds are remade in the Emperor's image, not over centuries, but in decades. The unity of the Primarchs transforms everything. In our history, the Crusade was a patchwork of triumph and tragedy, victories often undermined by rivalries, strategies compromised by personal feuds. Here, those rivalries exist, but they are tempered by bonds forged on Terra. The Primarchs know one another too well to descend into immediate distrust. Their arguments are fierce, but their unity holds for now. Horus shines brightest of all. His charisma binds his brothers, his brilliance in war unmatched. As Warmaster, he is not simply a commander, but a symbol. The legions rally to him as much as to the Emperor. Campaign after campaign, he proves his genius, his daring victories inspiring awe across the galaxy. To the rank and file of the legions, Horus is not only their commander, he is their hero. Guilliman thrives in his role as architect. Where Horus blazes through campaigns, Guilliman ensures permanence. He builds supply lines, governance systems, and local administrations that turn conquests into stable provinces. His dream of a realm, structured and orderly, begins to take shape long before Ultramar ever exists. Entire sectors are reorganized under his designs, ensuring that humanity's expansion is not merely conquest, but civilization. Sanguinius, angelic, becomes the soul of the crusade. Where he fights, morale soars. His very presence inspires mortals to endure beyond reason. His compassion tempers the brutality of conquest, ensuring that some worlds bend to the Imperium not in fear, but in awe. His bond with Horus grows strong, the two becoming symbols of unity and loyalty, their friendship binding others to them. Magnus, under the Emperor's guidance, explores psychic mastery as no other can. Entire sectors are reorganized under his designs, ensuring that humanity's expansion is not merely conquest, but civilization. Sanguinius, angelic, becomes the soul of the crusade. Where he fights, morale soars. His very presence inspires mortals to endure beyond reason. His compassion tempers the brutality of conquest, ensuring that some worlds bend to the Imperium not in fear, but in awe. His bond with Horus grows strong, the two becoming symbols of unity and loyalty, their friendship binding others to them. Magnus, under the Emperor's guidance, explores psychic mastery as no other can.
The Librarius project, so controversial in our history, finds new footing with him at the helm, sanctioned and controlled. His sons, the Thousand Sons, thrive not as pariahs, but as the Emperor's sanctioned scholars of the warp. Magnus is not yet corrupted, not yet betrayed, but still dangerously curious. Tzinch whispers, but the Emperor's shadow tempers his hunger, for now. Even Angron, freed from the fate of Nuceria, finds his place. His fury is no less, but it is directed. He becomes the spear of shock assault, unleashed where resistance is most ferocious. His loyalty to his brothers, who have known him since childhood, tempers the bitterness that once defined him. He is still a weapon of rage, but not a wounded animal. He fights with purpose, not despair. And so the galaxy trembles. In a century, the Imperium spreads further than it did in 2. The Great Crusade is not a dream of conquest. It is conquest itself, realized at impossible speed. To the galaxy's xenos, it seems as if humanity has been unleashed as a storm, guided by gods of flesh and iron. Yet, even in this perfection, cracks form. The Primarchs are united, yes, but they are not uniform. Guilliman and Dawn chafe under Horus's daring, arguing for structure over risk. Russ mocks their caution, his savagery at odds with their precision. Magnus pushes ever deeper into the warp, alarming those who distrust sorcery. Kurz whispers of doom in every council, his visions unsettling his brothers. Lorgar, denied his long exile, still burns with questions of faith, staring at his father and wondering whether godhood lies in his shadow. The Emperor watches all of this, silent, calculating. He has forged his sons into weapons, but weapons can cut in many directions. For now their unity holds. For now, their pride fuels conquest, not rebellion. But even he knows that destiny is never simple. The galaxy kneels before humanity faster than any could have imagined. But unity is not peace. And in every victory, the seeds of future discord are sown. The Great Crusade blazes across the galaxy like wildfire. Humanity expands at a pace never before seen, guided by the Emperor and his perfect sons. Worlds fall one after another. Xenos empires crumble beneath the disciplined fury of the legions. The dream of a galaxy united under one banner seems closer than ever. But the closer perfection comes, the more fragile it becomes. For even in unity, the seeds of division stir. The Primarchs were created to embody aspects of their father's genius. Each was designed as a reflection of the Emperor's will, yet each was also shaped by his own pride, his own vision of what that will truly meant. On Terra, they grew together, tested themselves against one another, bound as brothers. But as the crusade unfolds, those differences sharpen. Their visions of empire, once tempered by the halls of their shared childhood, now clash across battlefields and council chambers. The first fractures are subtle. Robote Guilliman and Rogel Dawn argue endlessly with Horus. To Guilliman, the crusade must not simply conquer, it must govern. Worlds must be integrated into stable structures, supplied, fortified, organized. He builds administrative systems that span entire sectors, his genius shaping conquests into permanence. Dawn supports him, his obsession with fortification reinforcing the need for stability. Horus, by contrast, burns for momentum. His daring strikes, his bold maneuvers win glory and expand the Imperium with dazzling speed. But to Guilliman and Dawn, they seem reckless, victories won at costs too high, worlds claimed without foundations. Their arguments spill into the councils of war. Horus defends his vision with charisma, Guilliman with logic, Dawn with unyielding will. For now, the Emperor mediates, his authority keeping disagreements from festering into rebellion. But the seeds are sown, different visions of how mankind should rule the stars. Layman Russ finds himself at odds with many. To him, the galaxy is prey, and the Imperium is the wolf that hunts it. He mocks Guilliman's endless bureaucracy, scorns Dawn's fortresses, and derides Perturbo's cold calculations. To Russ, war is not science, it is fury, instinct, and dominance. His sons fight like he does, a storm of fangs and axes, and though they win glory, they also leave resentment in their wake. Other Primarchs tire of cleaning up after the wolves, of soothing conquered populations brutalized by their savagery. Russ laughs at their complaints, but the laughter does little to soothe wounded pride. Perturbo himself simmers. On Terra, he was raised beside his brothers, but even there he felt overshadowed. His genius for fortification, for engines of war, is unmatched, but it is thankless. Perturbo himself simmers. On Terra, he was raised beside his brothers, but even there he felt overshadowed. His genius for fortification, for engines of war, is unmatched, but it is thankless. His fortresses are marvels, his siegecraft essential, yet praise flows always to Horus's victories, Guilliman's systems, Dawn's stoicism. Perturbo builds, but others shine. His bitterness grows, quiet but deep, a wound unhealed. Magnus walks another path. Under the Emperor's eye, his psychic mastery flourishes. The Librarius project thrives, sanctioned by his authority. Yet Magnus is never satisfied. His hunger for knowledge pushes him deeper into the warp, probing mysteries even the Emperor warns against. His brothers argue with him, Dawn calling him reckless, Russ calling him dangerous, even Horus cautioning restraint. Magnus listens, but pride drives him further. He is certain he can master what others fear. To him, ignorance is weakness, but to others, his arrogance is peril. Conrad Kurz remains the most alien. On Terra, he was raised in light, but his soul was always shadowed.
His visions of the future are bleak, filled with blood and despair. His brothers grew weary of his constant warnings, his whispered prophecies of betrayal, of doom. On the crusade, he becomes a prophet of fear, his campaigns drenched in terror. Where Guilliman brings order and Horus brings fire, Curse brings silence, conquered worlds left trembling in dread of night. His brothers distrust him, his methods a constant source of tension. Yet his visions, dismissed though they often are, linger in their minds. Even Fulgrim, brilliant and shining, stirs envy. His obsession with perfection wins admiration, but also contempt. His brothers mock his vanity, his endless drive for beauty in war, but he ignores them. To Fulgrim, only perfection justifies existence. His friendship with Ferrus Manus tempers him somewhat, the two bound by mutual respect for craft, but his pride grows ever sharper. And then there is Angron, raised on Terra, spared the gladiatorial pits of Nuceria. He is less wounded, but his fury remains. He is a storm given form, unleashed upon the galaxy with terrible force. His loyalty to his brothers tempers some of his rage, but he remains difficult, always pushing against restraint, always demanding blood. He is a weapon too powerful to ignore, but too unstable to trust fully. The Emperor sees all of this. He does not intervene harshly. He is too great to stoop to constant correction. He allows his sons to argue, to clash, to sharpen themselves against one another. To him, these are natural tensions, necessary in building an empire. But he knows pride as well as any. He knows pride can fracture even steel. The most dangerous fracture, however, lies not in ideology, but in ambition. Horus is beloved, yes, but his brilliance and charisma make him the natural focus of his brothers. He does not seek their worship, but he earns it. They look to him not just as warmaster, but as leader, as example. Even Sanguinius, angelic and adored, bows to Horus's flame. To Guilliman, to Dawn, even to Russ, Horus is the brother they measure themselves against. The Emperor knows this as well. He watches Horus's star rise, and for the first time, he wonders whether even unity can hold against the pride of gods in flesh. For now, the crusade continues. The galaxy falls, humanity rises. But beneath the triumph, the fractures widen. Pride burns hotter, rivalries sharpen, ambition gnaws at unity. The Primarchs are brothers, yes, they are weapons, yes, but they are also men, and men, even demigods, cannot escape their own pride. The question is not whether the fractures exist. It is how long it will take before they break. The warp seethes. It has always seethed. It is the reflection of mortal thought and hunger, the storm beneath reality, the endless ocean of gods and demons. In our history, the scattering of the Primarchs was its triumph. The Chaos Powers stole the Emperor's greatest creations and flung them across the galaxy, shaping them with pain and chance until the seeds of betrayal were sown. But in this alternate timeline, they are denied. The Primarchs remain on Terra. They are raised by their father, their loyalty tempered by his presence. The Chaos Gods watch from their thrones and howl in fury. They have been cheated. Khorne bellows his rage, his brass throne shaking as he sees a galaxy being conquered not in slow ruin, but in unity. War still flows, blood still spills, skulls still pile high, but the Imperium's order offends him. He does not want disciplined legions, he wants frenzy. He craves slaughter without restraint, rage without control. The Emperor's sons, honed and precise, starve him of his truest joy. Nurgle watches patiently. To him all things rot eventually, even perfection, even unity. He whispers not with fury, but with comfort, sowing seeds of despair in mortals caught beneath the weight of conquest. He knows the Primarchs are mighty, but he also knows that war breeds refugees, and refugees breed disease. He waits, feeding on the cracks of exhaustion that will one day appear.
Tzeentch, ever the schemer, delights even in failure. The scattering was denied, but destiny is never truly sealed. He sees the pride of the Primarchs, the rivalries burning already, and he laughs. To him, unity is simply another mask, one he can twist. Every argument, every clash of vision, every secret ambition is a thread for him to pull. He is patient, he is eternal, he will find a way. And Slaanesh, in this reality, she is not yet born. The fall of the Eldar has not occurred, their empire has not collapsed, and the great scream that birthed the Dark Prince has not shattered the warp. For now there is silence where she should be. But silence is not absence. The cravings of mortals still feed the sea. Excess, obsession, desire, they flow somewhere. Some bleed into Tzeentch, others into Khorne, others still dissipate. Yet the potential remains. The Primarchs, for all their perfection, burn with excess. Their pride, their obsession, their brilliance, these are seeds waiting for a harvest. And when the harvest comes, something will rise to feast. The Chaos Gods turn their gaze toward Terra. They cannot unmake the Emperor's victory, but they can corrupt it. They cannot scatter his sons, but they can whisper to them. Magnus is the first they reach. His psychic hunger makes him vulnerable. Even under the Emperor's guidance, he pushes deeper into the warp, eager to master what others fear. He feels whispers on the edge of thought, promises of knowledge beyond imagining, truths hidden even from his father. He dismisses them at first, but curiosity is a door that never closes. Tench's laughter echoes in his soul. Lorgar, too, is vulnerable. Raised on Terra, he does not suffer the scars of Colchis' zealotry, but his hunger for faith remains. He looks at his father and sees divinity unspoken, a god who refuses to be named. He burns with questions of purpose, of worship, of meaning. The Emperor dismisses such questions with cold pragmatism, but Lorgar cannot let them go. In that hunger, whispers fester. Demons do not need to tempt him with power, they tempt him with faith. Perturbo's bitterness is another crack. Overshadowed again and again by brothers more celebrated, he festers in silence. His genius for fortification and destruction is unmatched, but recognition rarely comes. The warp whispers to him of vengeance, of a place where his genius would not be mocked, but exalted. He resists for now, but bitterness is fertile soil. Kurz hears the warp differently. His visions of doom are real, prophecies that bleed into his mind unbidden. He sees futures drenched in blood, brothers betraying brothers, the Emperor slain. He warns them, but they do not listen. They never listen. His despair deepens, and despair is Nurgle's gift. To Kurz, the whispers are not temptation, they are confirmation.
Even Horus is not untouchable. He is loyal, brilliant, beloved, but pride is a weapon sharper than any blade. The warp does not need to corrupt him with lies. It need only show him the truth, that his brothers look to him more than to the emperor, that the legions chant his name louder than their fathers, that he, not the emperor, is the soul of the crusade. These truths are poison enough. The Chaos Gods do not strike openly. They do not tear Primarchs away or reveal themselves in fire. They whisper. They wait. They press against cracks already forming. For they know that even perfection can be undone, not by force, but by pride. Meanwhile, their influence spreads among mortals. Imperial governors, soldiers, and settlers whisper prayers in the dark. Cults arise in conquered worlds, offering sacrifice in exchange for power, for hope, for vengeance. Even as the crusade marches, corruption spreads like a shadow in its wake. The Primarchs fight wars of conquest, but beneath them, the warp stirs wars of faith. The Emperor knows. He has always known. He speaks little of chaos to his sons, for he fears their curiosity as much as their ignorance. He tells them to resist whispers, to trust in discipline, to trust in him. Some obey, others bristle, for secrecy breeds doubt, and doubt is fertile soil for corruption. The shadow of chaos lengthens. It cannot break the Imperium yet. It cannot turn sons against father, not yet. But it waits, patient, eternal. The Primarchs are strong, but they are not flawless. Their pride, their hunger, their ambition, all are threads. And in the warp, threads are all that is needed. The galaxy may kneel before humanity. The Primarchs may stand united. But chaos is eternal, and it will find a way. The galaxy burns with the light of the Great Crusade.
World after world bends the knee to Terra, its banners torn down and replaced with the Aquila. The legions march, the fleets expand, and the Emperor's dream seems closer than ever to fulfillment. From the outside, it is an unstoppable tide. To the conquered, it is the coming of gods. To mankind, it is the long-awaited dawn. But within, the cracks widen. The Primarchs are not mere generals. They are embodiments of vision, each carrying within them a philosophy of war, of rule, of destiny. Raised together on Terra, their rivalries sharpened by familiarity. Their debates echo in council halls as much as their battles rage across the stars. And as the crusade expands, these debates grow louder. The first divide is between those who seek order and those who crave freedom. Roboute Guilliman, architect of empire, champions centralized governance. To him, the Imperium must not be a patchwork of conquests held together by warlords. It must be a machine of order, each cog turning in harmony. His dream is not only of victory, but of permanence. Laws, institutions, and systems must be built, or else all victories will crumble in time. Rogel Dawn stands beside him. For Dawn, permanence is not an abstract ideal, it is stone. He sees every conquest as a fortress to be held, every world as a bastion to be fortified. Guilliman builds structures of law, Dawn structures of stone, but both believe in discipline, in order above all else. Leman Russ snarls at their arguments. To him, empires built on paper and walls are fragile things. The galaxy is prey, and mankind is the predator. The wolf does not build fortresses, it hunts. To Russ, the crusade is not about bureaucracy or permanence. It is about strength, about reminding the galaxy who rules. His wolves fight savagely, their loyalty absolute, their victories drenched in blood.
To Guilliman they are reckless. To Dawn they are undisciplined. To Russ they are the only way. Horus, as Warmaster, balances between them. He sees merit in Guilliman's order, in Dawn's fortresses, in Russ's savagery. His genius lies not in vision, but in synthesis. He can unite them, for now. His charisma binds his brothers where logic cannot. But even Horus cannot silence the fire of their pride forever. Magnus stands apart, championing another doctrine entirely. To him, the future of humanity is not in stone or steel, but in mind. Psychers are rising, their power undeniable. The warp is dangerous, yes, but it is also the key to mastery. Magnus argues that humanity must embrace psychic potential, not fear it. His Librarius project thrives under his hand, his 1,000 sons becoming scholars of the warp. Yet his brothers grow uneasy. Dawn mistrusts him, Russ despises him. Even Horus cautions restraint. Magnus listens, but his pride drives him forward. To him, ignorance is weakness, and he will not allow mankind to be weak. Conrad Kurz deepens the divide further. His doctrine is Terra. To him, order is not built with law or walls, it is built with fear. He crushes resistance not with reason, but with nightmare.
His campaigns leave conquered worlds silent, their populations trembling in obedience. Guilliman despises his methods. Dawn calls him dishonorable. Even Russ growls at his cruelty. But Kurz does not care. He sees in his visions that fear is the only truth, and he will not be swayed. Fulgrim and Ferrus Manus, bound by friendship, bring another argument. Fulgrim demands perfection in all things, war, art, existence itself. To him, the crusade must be not only victorious, but beautiful, a tapestry of excellence. Ferrus scoffs, valuing strength over beauty, but his respect for Fulgrim tempers their disagreements. Together, they argue that war is not just conquest, it is creation. To others, their obsession seems vanity. To Fulgrim, it is destiny. And then there is Angron. His doctrine is simple: rage. He does not believe in law or structure, in beauty or fear. He believes in freedom bought by blood. His red angels, unleashed in battle, embody his fury. Raised on Terra, he is less broken than in our history, but his rage remains untempered. He sees bureaucracy as chains, fortresses as cages, philosophy as weakness. Only war is honest. Only war is truth. His brothers fear him, pity him, or despise him, but none can deny his effectiveness. These doctrines clash not only in words, but in campaigns. Guilliman reorganizes sectors into stable provinces, only for Russ to sweep through them like a storm, leaving chaos in his wake. Dawn fortifies worlds, only for Kurz to terrorize them into submission instead. Magnus builds libraries of psychic knowledge, only for Angron to burn them down in fury. Each victory is marred by the friction of brothers who see the galaxy through different eyes. The Emperor does not intervene harshly. He allows his sons to argue, to fight, to test one another. He believes that unity will hold, that their love for him and for one another will bind them. But even he knows that doctrines are not mere preferences. They are destinies. And destinies, when opposed, must one day collide. The war of doctrines begins quietly. Council halls ring with arguments. Campaigns become competitions. Primarchs measure themselves not only against enemies, but against brothers. Who governs best? Who conquers fastest? Who builds strongest? Who inspires most? Pride feeds ambition, ambition feeds rivalry, and rivalry feeds division.
Horus works tirelessly to hold them together. His charisma, his brilliance, his loyalty to his father all bind the legions, but even he feels the strain. For every time he mediates, for every time he unites, he knows he is the center. His brothers look to him more than to the emperor. They cheer his name louder than his. And though Horus does not yet seek it, pride whispers, perhaps he should lead not only the crusade, but destiny itself. The war of doctrines is not open conflict, not yet, but it is a fire smouldering beneath the surface, ready to ignite. Each Primarch believes his vision is truth. Each believes the Imperium must follow his path. And each knows that one day compromise will no longer be enough.
The galaxy kneels before the Emperor's sons. But the greater battle is not fought in the stars. It is fought in their hearts, in their pride, in their visions of what mankind must become. The Imperium expands, the legions triumph, but unity grows fragile, and in the warp the gods laugh. The Great Crusade had survived rivalries, endured debates, and weathered countless battles. For decades the Primarchs had held their fragile unity, bound by loyalty to their father and by Horus's charisma as Warmaster. But no unity, however strong, is eternal. Pride waits, ambition whispers, and destiny always demands a breaking point. That breaking point came not on Terra, but at the edge of the galaxy, in a campaign that would scar brotherhood forever. The world was Carthaean, a jewel of a system, rich in resources, its people advanced enough to rival Old Night's greatest survivors. The Carthaean dominion was not a fractured human empire, nor a crude xenos race. It was disciplined, ordered, militarized. Its fleets were sleek and deadly, its armies drilled to perfection. Most dangerous of all, its rulers were psychers of great strength, schooled for generations in the art of harnessing the warp. To the Imperium, Carthaean was both prize and threat. Its resources could fuel 1,000 crusades. Its fleets could strengthen the Imperial navy. But its psychers, independent, uncontrolled, answering to no one but themselves, were intolerable. The Emperor decreed that Carthaean must fall. The campaign was assigned to Magnus and Leman Russ together.
The Emperor believed that Magnus's mastery of the warp and Russ's savagery would balance one another, ensuring victory without recklessness. But it was a choice heavy with risk, for Magnus and Russ had long despised one another. Magnus saw Russ as a blunt weapon, savage and unthinking. Russ saw Magnus as a sorcerer, dabbling in heresy, his power dangerous to mankind. Their rivalry, sharp but contained until now, was about to ignite. At first, the campaign went as expected. Magnus unraveled Carthaeon's psychic defenses with brilliant ease. His 1,000 sons bent the warp into weapons of fire and illusion, breaking fleets before they could fire a shot. Russ and his wolves tore through the ground armies, their savagery unstoppable. Victory seemed assured. But then came the disagreement. Magnus argued that Carthaeon could be integrated. Its psychers, though undisciplined, could be trained. Its fleets could be turned to imperial service. Its people could become part of the Imperium, strengthening humanity's dominion. To him, destruction would be waste. Russ rejected the idea with fury. To him, psychers were a danger that could never be trusted. Carthaeon's rulers would never submit willingly. Its people would always resist. To Russ, there was only one solution: extermination. Kill the psychers, burn their cities, enslave their fleets. Only then would Carthaon be safe. The arguments escalated into shouting, then into threats. Magnus accused Russ of blind savagery, of throwing away knowledge and strength out of fear.
Russ accused Magnus of heresy, of risking the entire Imperium by sparing witches. Their legions began to mirror their leaders, wolves and thousand suns glaring at one another, fists tightening on bolters. The campaign teetered on the brink of fratricide. Horus was summoned to mediate. He arrived with the lunar wolves, seeking to calm his brothers. His charisma soothed some tempers, his loyalty to both sides buying him space. Guilliman and Dawn weighed in from afar, supporting Russ's caution. Fulgrim and Ferrus supported Magnus, seeing the potential in Carthaon's knowledge. The Council of War turned into a council of doctrines, each Primarch arguing not just for strategy, but for destiny. And then, as if summoned by fate, the Carthaon Psychers struck. Their greatest seer, desperate and furious, unleashed a storm of warp fire that engulfed an entire fleet. Hundreds of ships were torn apart, thousands of souls consumed in an instant. The warp howled, and the shadow of chaos whispered louder than ever. Russ seized the moment. "See," he roared, "this is what sorcery brings. This is what happens when witches rule." Magnus raged back. "No, this is what happens when ignorance and fear drive you to crush what you do not understand." The argument erupted into violence. On the burning plains of Carthaon's capital, Magnus and Russ came to blows. Their duel shook the earth, psychic fire clashing with axe and fang. Their legions nearly turned on one another, wolves and thousand suns moments from slaughtering brothers in open war. It was Horus who stopped it. He threw himself between them, his voice thundering with authority, his power undeniable. "Enough," he bellowed. "We bleed the galaxy, and now we bleed ourselves? Do you want to hand victory to the xenos, to chaos, to anyone who waits for us to fall?" His words shamed them into stillness, but the damage was done. Carthaon burned. In the end, Russ's will prevailed. The Psychers were slain, their cities leveled, their fleets broken. Magnus withdrew in bitterness, his fury at his brothers and his father deepening into wounds that would never heal. The wolves howled in triumph, but their victory was hollow, for they had nearly killed their brothers to achieve it. The turning point was not just the fall of Carthaon. It was the moment when the unity of the Primarchs cracked open into the first real fracture. Brothers had nearly killed brothers. Their visions of empire had clashed not in words, but in blood. And though Horus had prevented disaster, even he knew the truth. Unity was dying. The Emperor heard of what transpired. He did not punish Magnus, nor Russ. He did not end the crusade. But his silence was heavy, his disappointment vast. He saw now that pride and vision were pulling his sons apart, and even his will could not hold them forever. The galaxy still fell to the Imperium. The crusade still blazed. But beneath the triumph, brotherhood was scarred. Magnus grew more defiant, Russ more hostile, Guilliman more cautious, Dawn more rigid. Horus, though still loyal, felt the weight of leadership as a burden heavier than any victory. The Primarchs were no longer united. They were factions waiting for destiny to choose sides. And in the warp, the gods laughed louder than ever. The galaxy is not blind. Empires rise and fall upon its stars, and nothing escapes the eyes of those who wait in the shadows. For decades, the Great Crusade has burned across the void, humanity's tide sweeping aside all rivals. To xenos and exiled humans alike, it seemed unstoppable, a storm guided by gods in flesh. But storms do not rage forever. Cracks had begun to form in the lightning.
and those who watched saw opportunity. The Eldar were the first. Their seers had long whispered of humanity's rise, of the Emperor's golden dream. Some believed it would burn itself out, consumed by its own savagery. Others warned it would rival even the ancient dominion of the Eldar. But until now, the Imperium's unity had made such debates theoretical. Humanity seemed unbreakable. The duel of Magnus and Ross at Carthaon changed everything. Though hidden from the masses of the Imperium, the ripples were felt in the warp. Eldar Farseers saw visions of brothers striking at brothers, of fire turning inward. They whispered to their craft worlds that the storm of mankind might one day consume itself. For the first time, the Eldar began to consider whether humanity could be stalled, not through direct war, but through patience. Let them bleed themselves, let their pride devour them. Some Eldar advocated subtle interference. Commorach's raiders struck more boldly at Imperial shipping, sowing discord and fear. Craft-worlders manipulated border conflicts, ensuring the legions were drawn into costly, grinding campaigns rather than swift victories. Small wounds, inflicted carefully, designed to widen the cracks already forming. The Orcs, by contrast, cared little for subtlety. They had always loved the challenge the legions offered, and with the Primarchs clashing among themselves, the Orcs saw the greatest opportunity for a fight the galaxy had ever known. War bosses declared wargs, not against distant xenos, but directly into Imperial war zones, seeking to smash the wolves, the suns, the ultramarines. Each crack in the Imperium was to them an invitation, each feud an excuse for bloodshed. And then there were the Necrons. In our history, many tomb worlds awoke quietly, unnoticed, striking only when the galaxy was fractured enough to be vulnerable. But here, the Imperium's rapid expansion had already forced contact. Necron dynasties stirred earlier, their lords recognizing both the threat and the opportunity. The unity of the Primarchs had been daunting. Their fracture, however, was promising. Dynasties began to probe Imperial holdings, striking fortified worlds, testing the Legion's responses. Where Guilliman fortified, they countered with silent tomb fleets. Where Russ rampaged, they faded into shadow. The Necrons had no interest in exploiting human pride. They simply calculated that pride would undo humanity in time. All they needed to do was endure. The Tyranids, still far beyond the galactic rim, were not yet a threat. But the psychic beacon of the Imperium, growing stronger with every conquest, called to them across the void. And in the warp, something vast and hungry turned its attention slowly toward the galaxy. Even the Tau, still primitives on their small homeworlds, benefited in ways unseen. The Imperium, distracted by its own arguments and endless wars, never looked their way. In our history, it was neglect that allowed them to rise. Here, it was discord. The smallest ember of destiny remained untouched because the fire burned elsewhere. Closer to home, human empires watched with envy and fear. Many had already been crushed, their rulers slain or forced into compliance. But whispers spread. The Primarchs are not united. The legions argue. Even the War Master cannot hold them forever. Rebellions flickered, insurgencies gained courage, cults whispered promises of independence. To most, these were suicides, but to a few, they were sparks of hope. And in the warp, chaos feasted. Every fracture, every doubt, every clash between brothers was a victory. Tinch wove them into schemes, turning arguments into threads of fate. Khorne bellowed with laughter as Magnus and Russ clashed, for every blow was bloodshed in his name. Nurgle whispered to Kurz as despair thickened in his heart. Even in the silence where Slaanesh had not yet been born, excess and obsession simmered, waiting for their harvest. The Emperor, ever vigilant, saw all of this. He tightened his control, pulling his sons into councils, demanding unity, commanding loyalty. But he knew the truth. The galaxy was watching. Every stumble was magnified. Every fracture was a weakness others would exploit. His dream was vast, but dreams are fragile things, and the galaxy was not patient. The reaction of the galaxy did more than test the Imperium. It accelerated its fractures. Guilliman fumed when Eldar manipulations unraveled his carefully laid systems. Russ rejoiced at the Orcs' War, seeing them as honest enemies. But Dawn called them a distraction that wasted strength. Perturabo grew ever more bitter as Necron fortresses resisted even his engines of war, his genius once again overshadowed by others' triumphs. Magnus, furious at the persecution of Psykers, delved ever deeper into the warp, seeking answers the Emperor refused to give. And Horus felt the weight of it all. The galaxy looked to him as the War Master, the center of unity, the one who held his brothers together. But he could not be everywhere. He could not silence every feud. He could not turn every defeat into victory. The burden grew heavier, and with it came doubt. Doubt that his father truly trusted him. Doubt that unity could survive. Doubt that perhaps, just perhaps, the Imperium was destined to fracture, unless someone stronger than even the Emperor seized destiny itself. The galaxy reacted with claws, with whispers, with shadows. And in doing so, it fed the very cracks that already bled. The Imperium was vast. Its conquests were magnificent. But the galaxy was patient. And it had seen empires rise before. It knew that eternity was never eternal. The galaxy trembled beneath the weight of humanity's rise. The Great Crusade had swept across thousands of worlds, guided by the Emperor and his 20 sons. For decades, the Primarchs had maintained a fragile unity, their rivalries tempered by loyalty, their pride softened by shared purpose. But no empire, no matter how vast, can endure forever without cracks deepening into chasms. And in the end, it was not xenos fleets, nor warp-born horrors that threatened the Imperium's core. It was the brothers themselves. The seeds had long been sown. Magnus and Russ, their hatred forged at Carthaeon, could no longer be contained. Guilliman and Dawn, frustrated with Horus's daring, accused him of recklessness that endangered all their gains. Perturburo simmered in silence, his genius continually overshadowed, his bitterness sharpening with every campaign. Curse drifted ever further into visions of despair, alienating his brothers with each prophecy of doom. Angron raged against every restraint, his fury threatening to consume even those who loved him. The Emperor saw all of this, but even he could not silence it. His authority was supreme, but his silence on chaos, his secrecy about the warp, his refusal to be worshipped as a god, all became fuel for dissent. Some of his sons believed him too distant, others too inflexible, others still too proud. They were bound by blood and by love, but bonds of blood can be broken, and love can curdle into resentment. The fracture began not with betrayal, but with philosophy. Guilliman and Dawn argued for a codified Imperium, a structure beyond the will of individuals. They feared that without laws, without permanence, the Empire would collapse the moment their father's light faded.
They began drafting frameworks, laws, systems, visions of an imperium greater than any single man. To them it was loyalty, ensuring their father's dream would outlive him. To others it was arrogance, a challenge to the emperor's authority. Ross mocked their structures, calling them chains. Angron spat at them, declaring them slavery. Even Horus, who respected their logic, bristled at their implication that he, the War Master, needed constraints. The council chambers grew louder with every meeting, arguments spilling into threats, threats into near violence. Magnus pressed his vision of psychic ascension more fiercely than ever. His 1,000 sons delved deeper into the warp, their mastery growing, their libraries swelling with knowledge. He declared that psychers were the future of mankind, the bridge to true godhood. But Dawn and Russ opposed him openly, accusing him of dragging humanity toward damnation. Kurz, in his visions, saw Magnus's path ending in fire and screamed his warnings to deaf ears. Even Horus, who valued Magnus, began to fear his ambition. And then came Lorga. On Terra, raised under the Emperor's gaze, his hunger for faith had never been broken by Colchis, but it had never been satisfied either.
He looked at his father and saw a god denied. He looked at his brothers and saw men who would not speak the truth. Quietly he began to preach. His sermons whispered of the Emperor not as mere conqueror, but as divine. His followers grew, cults spreading in shadows. When confronted, Lorgar defended himself with passion. What are you afraid of? That mortals worship perfection? That they call Father what he already is? The Emperor silenced him, forbidding worship, demanding reason, not faith. But his refusal only deepened Lorgar's hunger. To him, the denial of godhood was a betrayal of destiny. If the Emperor would not accept divinity, perhaps destiny itself was flawed. The factions grew. On one side, Guilliman, Dorn, and often Ferrus Manus, champions of order and permanence. On another, Russ, Angron, Kurz, and at times even Perturabo, who saw law as chains and preferred strength. Magnus stood apart, building his path of psychic ascension. Lorgar drifted into heresy of faith. Fulgrim sought perfection, his pride placing him wherever vanity demanded. Horus, War Master, struggled to hold them together, his charisma binding them for now, but his burden growing unbearable. The final spark came on the world of Veren. A rebellion had erupted, fueled by human cults whispering prayers to the warp. It was a cancer spreading across the planet, fed by resentment at imperial rule. Guilliman argued for reform, root out the corruption, but offer structure, law, stability. Russ demanded fire, burn the cults, kill their leaders, leave no survivors.
Magnus argued that the cults were misguided psychers who could be educated and turned to the Imperium's cause. The council dissolved into chaos. Voices rose, fists slammed, threats spat. And when Magnus declared that his father's refusal to speak openly of chaos was the true cause of corruption, Russ leapt across the chamber to strike him. The duel nearly reignited, brothers drawing blades, only barely restrained. Horus once again forced them apart, but this time his voice carried less authority. His brothers looked not with trust, but with resentment. Why should Horus decide? Why should Horus command? Why should Horus's word weigh more than theirs? The fracturing of brotherhood had begun. Legions began to drift with their Primarchs. Ultramarines and Imperial fists tightened their discipline, preparing for a future of law. Wolves and World-Eaters embraced savagery, their campaigns leaving ash in their wake. 1,000 Sons cloistered themselves in knowledge, distrusted by all.
Word-bearers whispered in shadows, their sermons spreading like wildfire. The emperor still commanded obedience, but his voice no longer carried unquestioned loyalty. His sons loved him, yes, but love was no longer enough. Even Horus felt it. His brothers looked to him for unity, but their faith in him was fracturing. Some saw him as father's lapdog, others as an overreaching tyrant. His charisma, once unifying, now seemed to breed suspicion. And in the silence of his chambers, Horus felt pride whisper,
"If father cannot hold us together, if my brothers cannot agree, then perhaps only I can." The Imperium was still vast, its armies still triumphed, but beneath the victories, the dream of unity was dying. The Primarchs, once brothers, were becoming rivals. The war of doctrines was becoming the war of destiny. And in the warp, the gods laughed, not because they had corrupted the suns, but because the suns were corrupting themselves. The dream of unity was always fragile. The emperor, in his brilliance, had created sons of unmatched power, each a demigod, each a reflection of his own genius. But reflections are never perfect. Each Primarch carried flaws as much as strengths, pride as much as purpose. For decades they conquered together, their rivalries tempered by love for their father and their shared vision of mankind's future. But in the end, it was their pride, not chaos, that shattered everything. The breaking began quietly. Worlds governed by Guilliman's order resisted Russ's savagery. Russ accused Guilliman of cowardice, Guilliman of barbarism. Magnus delved deeper into the warp, his 1,000 sons drifting ever further from their brothers, their eyes glowing with power others called heresy. Lorgar's sermons, once whispered in shadow, began to swell into open cults proclaiming the emperor as divine. Fulgrim demanded perfection from all campaigns, his vanity alienating even allies. Perturba's bitterness deepened into open scorn, his genius offered only grudgingly. Angron's fury grew uncontainable, leaving blood and ruin in his wake. Lorgar's sermons, once whispered in shadow, began to swell into open cults proclaiming the emperor as divine. Fulgrim demanded perfection from all campaigns, his vanity alienating even allies. Perturba's bitterness deepened into open scorn, his genius offered only grudgingly. Angron's fury grew uncontainable, leaving blood and ruin in his wake. The emperor saw the fractures, but his silence only widened them. He refused to speak openly of chaos, of the dangers lurking in the warp. He refused worship, even as mortals cried out for gods. He refused to bend his sons into unity through force, believing still that their love was enough. But love is fragile when weighed against pride. The final spark came at Terra itself. The Primarchs had gathered for council, summoned by their father to resolve the disputes tearing them apart. For days they argued. Guilliman and Dawn demanded codification, laws that would bind even the Primarchs themselves. Russ and Angron spat at the notion, declaring it slavery. Magnus accused his brothers of ignorance, their fear of the warp shackling humanity's true potential. Lorgar thundered that the Emperor's denial of divinity was betrayal, a rejection of truth. Fulgrim mocked, Perturbo seethed, Curse hissed visions of blood. Even Sanguinius, beloved by all, could not calm them, his angelic presence drowned by the storm. And Horus, once the unifier, once the war master, found his voice faltering. He demanded loyalty, demanded unity, but his brothers no longer heard him as they once had. To some, he was father's favored son, arrogant in his authority. To others, he was weak, unable to choose a side. To himself, he was torn, between love for his father and the creeping pride that whispered he alone could guide destiny.
The council ended not in resolution, but in rupture. No oaths were sworn, no unity preserved. The Primarchs left Terra with their legions, each convinced his vision was the true destiny of mankind. The long night had begun. Civil war erupted, not as a single rebellion, but as 100 fractures. Guilliman declared Ultramar the model for the Imperium, his laws binding dozens of sectors to his rule. Dawn fortified Terra, declaring loyalty but insisting on his vision of order. Russ unleashed his wolves on dissenters, tearing through those who opposed him. Angron's world-eaters burned worlds indiscriminately, their fury unchecked. Magnus withdrew with his 1,000 sons, their sorcery now an empire apart, their libraries glowing with warp fire. Lorgar's word-bearers spread across the stars, preaching faith in the Emperor even as they defied his will. Kurz became a shadow king, ruling through terror, his visions guiding slaughter. Fulgrim turned his campaigns into works of art and horror, perfection at any cost. Perturbero carved fortresses that became rival capitals, his bitterness now unmasked. The Emperor, for all his power, could not stop it. He was 1, and they were 20. His legions tore the galaxy apart in his name, each claiming to embody his will. Brother fought brother, not because of demonic corruption, but because of pride, because of vision, because of love twisted into rivalry. The Imperium fractured into rival empires. Some swore direct loyalty to Terra. Others claimed independence while professing love for the Emperor. Others still declared themselves the true inheritors of destiny, their brothers deluded. The Imperium fractured into rival empires. Some swore direct loyalty to Terra. Others claimed independence while professing love for the Emperor. Others still declared themselves the true inheritors of destiny, their brothers deluded. Civil wars spread, not contained to a single rebellion like the heresy we know, but erupting across the stars in countless flames. Chaos did not need to tempt them, it only needed to wait. Every battle fed Khorne, every moment of despair fed Nurgle. Every scheme, every betrayal, every clash of vision fed Tzeentch. And where excess bloomed, Fulgrim's vanity, Lorgar's faith, Magnus's obsession, whispers promised that one day another god would rise. The galaxy burned not because of a War Master's fall, but because perfection was never possible. The Primarchs, raised together, loved one another too much to be strangers, but hated one another too much to be united. Their father's silence, their own pride, their refusal to yield, these were the weapons sharper than any daemon's blade. The long night stretched on. Humanity endured, fractured and blooded. Perhaps, in time, one brother would triumph, forging unity from ashes. Perhaps Guilliman's order would prevail, or Horus's charisma, or Dawn's fortresses, or Magnus's vision. But each victory would be scarred, each triumph tainted by the blood of brothers slain. And perhaps no one would triumph. Perhaps humanity would splinter forever, rival empires warring endlessly, their Primarchs remembered not as saviors, but as the architects of ruin. Perhaps the xenos would rise again in the cracks, the Eldar enduring, the Orcs laughing, the Necrons waiting, the Tyranids hungering. Perhaps chaos, denied its greatest trick, would still win, not through corruption, but through inevitability. The Emperor sat upon his throne, golden and radiant, his dream in ruins. He had raised his sons together, spared them the exile of scattering, guided them with his own hand. And still they broke, still they bled, still they tore the galaxy apart. Unity was never eternal. Perfection was never possible. The long night had come, not because chaos had won, but because humanity itself had lost. And in the darkness, the galaxy whispered the same truth it always had and always would. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war.